Today's sermon is titled Return to Sacred, Releasing 2020, and to be delivered by our very own UUCC treasurer, administrator, and wise woman, Susan Landau, along with some of her UUCC friends. Susan.
So, welcome to the last UUCC Sunday service of the year 2020. We are in the final countdown of what has been an incredibly challenging year in so many ways: personal, local, national, worldwide, and universal. This year we have seen not only challenges up close and personal, but also on a global scale. What the heck is going on? I began a walk down memory lane by researching the events of 2020 and the events of 2020, and oh my goddess, this year. What a year this has been. For those of us in America, I do not even know where to begin. Our political structure standing on its head, impeachment, yes, that was already happening in January. It seems like forever ago. The chaos, the abuse, all the lies, the division of our country, the extreme abuse of power, so much anger, hatred, and cruelty towards each other. Children separated from their parents, racism, Black Lives Matter, the public murder of people of color, the murder of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and so many others. Wildfires in Australia, wildfires in California, Colorado, and Oregon. Constant proof of global warming. The death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the stacking of the Supreme Court. The never-ending election and the ongoing threat to our democracy. It is really hard not to be more despairing and overwhelmed, but realize that 2020 is coming to a close and it will soon be time to release it and move into 2021. Perhaps we can change our perspectives and soar above like the eagle to see things from a higher view. This morning, we have Nancy Tolan and Chris Fox, who have agreed to share from their perspective some of their experiences of 2020. Nancy, would you begin, please?
Thank you, Susan. Like so many of you, I was deeply shaken by the death of the notorious RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, on September 18th. She was a personal heroine for me, although I did not recognize her name when I first considered becoming a lawyer in the early 70s. Justice Ginsburg was a trailblazer who made the path easier for a teenage girl like me. I did not know a single woman lawyer, nor any female who wanted to pursue law. Ruth was one of 9 women in her class of 500 at Harvard Law School, but there were many more women in my class, not at Harvard. And now I understand the women law students outnumber the men slightly. My family was completely against the idea of me becoming a lawyer and tried to talk me out of it. Finally, when I announced that I had passed the bar at a holiday family gathering, one of my aunts insisted that I did not look like a lawyer and I should become a legal secretary. When I objected that I really didn't type that well, she said, "Oh, well then you should be the receptionist." She wasn't that far off the mark when at my very first job interview, the male partner asked me how fast I could type. I first learned about Justice Ginsburg by name when President Bill Clinton nominated her for the US Supreme Court in 1993. I was familiar with some of her landmark cases, which she had argued before the Supreme Court. Like RBG, I had realized it was sometimes better to go at an issue indirectly by arguing something that would appeal to the judges, rather than state my real goal to help the downtrodden. When I learned of RBG's death, I started on my own 5 stages of grief journey. You know these stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. First, denial. This can't be happening. How could RBG die? Her name was almost synonymous with stamina and strength. She famously worked out with a trainer regularly. Since 1999, she had survived several bouts with cancer, including several surgeries. She had heart stent surgery, and multiple falls, resulting in broken ribs. Just in July of 2020, RBG announced that she had been treated earlier this year for cancerous lesions on her liver and made clear her intentions to remain on the Supreme Court bench, stating she could still do the job full steam. Through it all, Justice Ginsburg did not miss a single oral argument until her 2018 lung surgery. And even then, she worked from her hospital bed. Ruth Bader Ginsburg could not die with 6 months to go before the election. It wasn't possible. So went denial. Next came anger. Did this mean Trump could nominate another Supreme Court justice like Gorsuch or Kavanaugh? Hadn't he done enough damage that would last for decades? And hadn't the Democrats seen Weekend at Bernie's? Yep, I thought they could just pretend that Ruth was still alive. She was so tiny, it wouldn't be that hard to shuffle her around and misdirect inquisitors. The Supremes famously don't reconvene until the first Monday in October. Surely that could buy some time. Dang, I figured the Ginsburg offspring were too honorable to engage in such a ploy. Alas, I reasoned it would not be necessary because everybody must remember Mitch McConnell's refusal to move forward on Merrick Garland's nomination by President Obama in March 2016. Yes, 8 months before the presidential election, McConnell was vehement that the people should decide who would fill the seat by electing the president. Surely he had a scintilla of integrity and would follow the same reasoning a mere 6 weeks ahead of the 2020 election. Scintilla is one of those little words that pops up in all kinds of legal decisions. Feel like I have to use it. Soon, the pundits were saying there was not enough time for a nomination and approval by the Senate. Even I could see that the Congress couldn't get its act together to pass additional COVID-19 relief, so there was nothing to worry about. And then the unthinkable happened, and Amy Coney Barrett was sworn in, despite my desperate bargaining, which I don't have time to recount, nor my depression. The last stage of grief is acceptance. I'm ready to accept RBG's passing. I have felt a smidgen of relief as the current Supreme Court has not completely been co-opted as it considers Trump's efforts to steal the election. There is some independence on the Supreme Court still, and Chief Justice Roberts clearly understands the importance of that independence. It remains an essential American judicial value, and even Ruth Bader Ginsburg would take some satisfaction in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Chris, would you be willing to share your experiences of 2020 with us?
Thank you. This is the present tense, a tense present. I borrowed this line from an essay I read in the New York Times this week. It is a fitting way to describe our experience of 2020. It is a year of hope and hope deferred, of immediate worry and unarticulated anxiety. 2020 is a year that slowed to a crawl when we discovered that no, the virus would not be over soon, but yes, a semblance of normalcy did return for a while. And now what is not edging its way to closure but rampaging is a consequence of not paying enough attention. Growing up, my mom would have admonished us that we did not learn our lesson the first time. But such is the human condition, and I might add the unflagging optimism of Americans, unlike, say, the Italians or the Hungarians, who based on their collective history would not have been so glib. They have it too, but they were sure it was coming. They knew it was coming back. This is not to say that all is a negative spiral downward to the profound weirdness of a new reality. We will get our old reality back mostly intact soon enough. At least I hope so. So it is in this present tense, in a tense present, I offer you some comforting thoughts about the past year. In 2020, I read more books than I have in the past 3 years put together. I am sure I'm not alone in finding solace in reading. I paused more often to contemplate what I read, and I found a bit of joy whenever I came across a new word to look up. My friend Tricia speaks of these newfound words as little gifts. It is the season of gifts, and so I hope I get a few more. Like many people, I experienced the passing of a loved one, and I could not be there to reach out in those last few moments of life to help ease the passing. My father was a proud man and often a difficult person to be around. He absolutely hated it when anyone fussed over him, so for him to leave on his own time, on his own terms, afforded him at least the dignity of having death come his own way. I am strangely comforted by this, even with coinciding feelings that I would have liked to be near him. Death is, as life is, a little different for each of us, yet it is the same, one of the many paradoxes I have pondered this year. I take great comfort in my work. The students I guide have demonstrated over and over again just how resilient is the human spirit. Yet I worry about them. This is an age when worlds should be expanding, when more freedom is given to make choices of consequence, to affirm or deny what they have been taught, what they think they know, and how they express themselves in the world. But their lives have been constrained to looking at a computer screen for hours a day, to finish their courses, to participate in their clubs and service activities. Some of the lucky ones who play a sport actually got to do so. I asked some of my students what they learned this year, if it had affected their goals or their outlook on the future. Here are a few responses condensed. Natika says, one thing I've learned through the pandemic is how my connections and friendships with acquaintances really do matter. Whether it's simply hello to someone in the hallways or talking to someone after school, it's these minuscule conversations that make up a great part of my life. I miss them now because I only speak with my closest friends, which is awesome, but speaking with those I don't have classes with is also important to me. I've become more observant of people's words versus their actions and their regards for public health. It's interesting how the people who have credentials to be considered educated break basic health protocols during the pandemic, which has made me ponder what education or being educated means. Lastly, I don't believe my aspirations have changed. If anything, I'm anxious for my generation, as we're going to deal with tremendous consequences after we come to a calmer time. Whatever our dreams may be now, we will have to step up for the world's and for society's sake. Harshini says, during the pandemic, I learned the importance of family. More than anyone else, they are always here to support me and lift me up whenever I struggle. I also learned more about gratitude. I take moments of the day to just say thanks. For the new year, I hope families can get back on their feet again. I hope the vaccine is effective and helps us come back to what our normal was. I also aspire to be more independent and confident this next year. At first, I was fearful of what 2021 has to bring. However, I'm learning to be confident, for I can face anything that does come my way. Justin adds, during this pandemic, I've mainly learned the importance of actively working on relationships, because when you stop regularly seeing people in person, it's hard to connect. But I'm excited for the new year when I hope to meet new people in college. Like Natika, I look forward to the day when we are no longer safe in our hygienic little worlds and no longer avoiding eye contact with fellow shoppers at the Croc. When out walking in the neighborhood, I'm not limited to talking to the deer and the turkeys who do not wonder if I'm contagious. Like Harshini, I'm consciously more grateful for the life Jack and I live. Like all my students who shared comments, the importance of the relationships we have now has reinvigorated us after every distressing moment in 2020. We will bid 2020 farewell, but not without recognizing it gave us some truths to hold on to, some lessons to learn, and some hopes to make good on, and especially some relationships to newly treasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy and Chris, both. So if you think back on the drama and the craziness and the upheaval and all the things that have been going on in 2020, Just kind of hold those in your thoughts for a moment. And then think about this. For many years, I've heard light workers, shamans, and others speak of what they call the Great Awakening, the Great Turning, or the Great Shift in our world. It is also called the end times, but think of it as the end of times as we know it, not the end of the world. Many different cultures have prophesied its coming for eons, each giving it a different name. What we've been experiencing in 2020 and continue to experience is us being right smack dab in the middle of the Great Turning. The Great Turning is a global awakening to the dis-ease of our planet, our love of life, and the revolution that is required to heal our world. It is a recognition by all of us that we truly are all one, that the earth and everything on her is a living being. The humans, the animals, the trees, water, rocks, birds, all connected, all one. Things have to be shaken up in order for people to wake up and get it. This chaos is the wake-up call needed for humanity and for the earth to heal. People's hearts sometimes have to be broken open to shake them awake. We are living in the imbalance of people not living their truth or in their integrity. We need to wake up and learn to look for the silver lining in everything and start to ask, how can I see things in a different way, in the positive? People are waking up and becoming who they truly are and beginning to walk in their own personal power. It is truly the great unveiling of our time. And we're not just moving into a new year, but we are moving into a whole new time. This is an evolutionary moment for our world, and we are witnessing it. This is, this life is a sacred path that we all walk together, with or without the awareness that we are. I firmly believe that every challenge, every hardship and obstacle is an opportunity for each of us to look within, heal ourselves, and grow. It is sometimes hard to remember this when we are deep in the middle of chaos and our angst, but it is true. There are events rising to the surface that have been making their way to 2020 for hundreds of years, all culminating in a glorious and sacred opportunity for each of us to expand ourselves. These things have come to the surface so that we can heal them and return to the sacred. I would like us to refocus and be open to that, beginning that process now, together, in community, and in ceremony. If you have brought a candle to our Zoom ritual, and here is mine, please light it now as we call in the directions. If you do not have a candle handy, please imagine you have a candle with you. Place the candle close by, and with us, strike a virtual match or light a virtual fire stick and light your imaginary candle. Janet Cooper, Lori Napoli, Hank Kruzik, and Treva Boyce will be calling in our directions. So as our candles are burning and our ceremony begins, Janet will start with calling in with the calling in of the directions by invoking the East.
We call in and honor the energy of the East. The directions represent the wheel of life. East is the beginning. It is the time of birth, the time of newness, the seeds pushing up through the earth to begin their life cycle. East is represented by the color yellow, the season of spring, and the element of air. East is where we begin to breathe. This morning, we call in all of these energies of the East as we make this journey from the beginnings of this year, 2020.
We call in and honor the energy of the South. In the Wheel of Life, South represents the time of youth, adolescence, and growing into young adulthood. South is represented by the color red, the season of summer, and by the element of fire. South, where we grow into the best version of our younger selves. This morning, we call in all of these energies of the South as we make this journey through our experiences of this year, 2020.
We call in and honor the energy of the West. In the Wheel of Life, West represents the time of maturity as we grow and absorb knowledge throughout our adulthood to become strong, mature, and thriving adults. It is our responsibility to turn our knowledge into wisdom that will benefit those who follow. West is represented by the color black, blue, or green, depending upon the belief system, and by the element of water. West is a season of autumn and of dream time. West is a time of settling in and becoming until we know deeply who we truly are. This morning, we call in all of the energies of the West as we make this journey into understanding our experiences of this year, 2020.
We call in and honor the energy of the North. In the Wheel of Life, North represents the afterlife, our ancestors, those whose shoulders we stand upon, and death. North is represented by the color white, the season of winter, and by the element of earth. North is where we release all things in preparation for the newness that will begin again with the return of the East. This morning, we call in all of the energies of the North as we make this journey into releasing our experiences of this year, 2020.
We thank all of the directions for being here to witness us on our journey. IA. Now, close your eyes and place both feet firmly on the floor in front of you or the ground. Envision a root growing down from the bottom of each foot and one growing down from your spinal cord. Deep down into the earth, take those roots. Ground yourself as you take 3 deep breaths, with each breath connecting you more and more to the ground below. When you feel yourself settled and grounded, take one last deep breath and let it out. Now focus on 2020 and everything that has occurred in your life, everything you have experienced and lived through. Think about your feelings of overwhelm, of frustration, of powerlessness, of despair, anger, angst, and anything else that comes up for you. Feel how that feels in your body. Feel how that makes you feel separate. Feel how it makes you feel alone. Hold that for just a moment, and then take another very deep breath and let it all out. As you let it out, releasing all those emotions. Release the feelings of chaos and unpredictability that have been holding us all hostage for this past year. And with another deep breath and exhalation, let it all out again. Every last bit. It does not serve you to hold on to it. So let it go. And with your eyes still closed, gently allow your heart to open and listen with your entire being as I share The Great Turning About by Christine Fry. So really take this in. You've asked me to tell you about the great turning, of how we saved the world from disaster. The answer is both simple and complex. We turned. For hundreds of years, we had turned away as life on Earth grew more precarious. We turned away from the homeless men on the streets, the stench from the river, the children orphaned in Iraq, the mothers dying of AIDS in Africa. We turned away because that was what we had been taught, to turn away from our pain, from the hurt in another's eyes, from the drunken father, from the friend betrayed. Always we were told, in actions louder than words, to turn away, turn away. And so we became a lonely people, caught up in a world moving too quickly, too mindlessly towards its own demise, until it seemed as if there were no safe space to turn, no place, inside or out, that did not remind us of fear or terror, despair and loss, anger and grief. Yet, on one of those days, someone did turn. Turned to face the pain, turned to face the stranger, turned to look at the smoldering world and the hatred seething in too many eyes, turned to face himself, herself. And then another turned, and another, and another. And as they wept, they took each other's hands until whole groups of people were turning, young and old, gay and straight, people of all colors, all nations, all religions, turning not only to the pain and hurt, but to beauty, gratitude, and love, turning to one another with forgiveness and a longing for peace in their hearts. At first, the turning made people dizzy, even silly. There were people standing to the side, gawking, criticizing, trying to knock the turners down. But the people turning kept getting up, kept helping one another to their feet. Their laughter and kindness brought others into the turning circle, until even the naysayers began to smile and sway. As the people turned, they began to spin, reweaving the web of life, mending the shocking tears, knitting it back together with the colors of the earth, sewing on tiny mirrors so the beauty of each person, each creature, each plant, each life might be seen and respected. And as the people turned, as they spun like the earth, through the universe, the web wrapped around them like a soft baby blanket, making it clear that all were loved, nothing separate. As this love reached into every crack and crevice, the people began to wake and wonder, to breathe and give thanks, to celebrate together. And so the world was saved, but only as long as you too, sweet one, remember to turn. So now see yourself in your mind's eye, with your arms outstretched at whatever age, joyously spinning and turning with your heart wide open as you shed and release the energies of 2020. Release them all and begin to turn towards and embrace 2021 from an entirely new and higher perspective. Hold this in your heart and remember to turn. Turn to what is sacred. Now take a deep breath when you're ready and begin to feel your fingers and toes. You can move them a bit if you like. Draw your roots up from deep in the earth, back up inside your feet, and back up inside your tailbone. Wiggle back and forth a little in your seat. Take another deep breath and gently open your eyes to return to Zoom land. Settle back in again and feel complete and fully here. And when we're all back, gently blow out your candle or your virtual candle. Triva, would you please begin the releasing of the directions?
Energies of the North, spirits of our ancestors, we are in deep gratitude for your presence here this morning. We now release you.
Energies of the West, place of wisdom and introspection, we are in deep gratitude for your presence here this morning. We now release you.
Energies of the South, place of fire and passion, we are in deep gratitude for your presence here this morning. We now release you.
Energies of the East, place of new beginnings and new life, we are in deep gratitude for your presence here this morning. We now release you.
And so it is.